he finished dressing himself, and to the accompaniment of the emphatic exhortations of his spouse, he wrapped up the nose in a cloth and issued into the street. He intended to lose it somewhere, either at somebody's door, or in a public square, or in a narrow alley. But just then, in order to complete his bad luck, he was met by an acquaintance who showered inquiries upon him. "Hullo, Ivan Yakovlevich, whom are you going to shave so early in the morning?" So that he could find no suitable opportunity to do what he wanted. Later on, he did let the nose drop, but a sentry bore down upon him with his halberd and said, "Look out, you have let something drop." And Ivan Yakovlevich was obliged to pick it up and put it in his pocket. A feeling of despair began to take possession of him, all the more as the streets became more thronged and the merchants began to open their shops. At last he resolved to go to the Isaac Bridge, where perhaps he might succeed in throwing it into the Neva. But my conscience is a little uneasy that I have not yet given any detailed information about Ivan Yakovlevich, an estimable man in many ways. Like every honest Russian tradesman, Ivan Yakovlevich was a terrible drunkard, and although he shaved other people's faces every day, his own was always unshaved. His coat, he never wore an overcoat, was quite mottled. It had been black, but become brownish yellow. The collar was quite shiny, and instead of 3 buttons, only threads by which they have been fastened were to be seen. Ivan Yakovlevich was a great cynic, and when Kovalyov, the member of the municipal committee, said to him, as was his custom while being shaved, "Your hands always smell, Ivan Yakovlevich," and the latter answered, "What do they smell of?" "I don't know, my friend, but they smell very strong." Ivan Yakovlevich, after taking a pinch of snuff, would then, by way of reprisals, set to work to soap him on the cheek, the upper lip, behind the ears, on the chin, and everywhere. This worthy man now stood on the Isaac Bridge. At first, he looked round him, then he leaned on the railings of the bridge, as though he wished to look down and see how many fish were swimming past, and secretly threw the nose, wrapped in a little piece of cloth, into the water. He felt as though a ton weight had been lifted off him, and laughed cheerfully. Instead, however, of going to shave any officials, he turned his steps to a building, the signboard of which bore the legend, "Tea served here," in order to have a glass of punch, when suddenly he perceived at the other end of the bridge a police inspector of imposing exterior, with long whiskers, 3-cornered hat, and sword hanging at his side. He nearly fainted, but the police inspector beckoned to him with his hand and said, "Come here, my dear sir." Ivan Yakovlevich, knowing how a gentleman should behave, took his hat off quickly, went towards the police inspector, and said, "I hope you're in the best of health." "Never mind my health. Tell me, my friend, why were you standing on the bridge?" "By heaven, gracious sir, I was on the way to my customers, and only looked down to see if the river was flowing quickly." "That is a lie. You won't get out of it like that. Confess the truth." "I am willing to shave your grace 2 or even 3 times a week, gratis," answered Ivan Yakovlevich. "No, my friend, don't put yourself out. 3 barbers are busy with me already, and reckon it a high honor that I let them show me their skill. Now then, out with it. What were you doing there?" Ivan Yakovlevich grew pale, but here the strange episode vanishes in mist, and what further happened is not known. Chapter 2. Kovalyov, the member of the municipal committee, awoke fairly early that morning and made a droning noise, brrr, brrr, through his lips, as he always did, though he could not say why. He stretched himself and told his valet to give him a little mirror which was on the table. He wished to look at the heat boil which had appeared on his nose the previous evening, but to his great astonishment he saw that instead of his nose he had a perfectly smooth vacancy in his face. Thoroughly alarmed, he ordered some water to be brought and rubbed his eyes with a towel. Sure enough, he had no longer a nose. He then sprang out of bed and shook himself violently. No nose any more. He dressed himself and went at once to the police superintendent. But before proceeding further, we must certainly give the reader